We've all been waiting for the release of Assassin's Creed Mirage since September of 2022, and for the majority of that time, Ubisoft has kept its cards pretty close to its chest, keeping us guessing about what Mirage could actually be like. Well, finally, we've been given some genuine information, as just last week, a bunch of playtesters were invited to give Mirage a go. Unfortunately, we weren't invited to this playtest like some other creators in the space, but what we have done is analyze every single second of footage we could find to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of Mirage. So, let's take a look and see if Mirage has lived up to the hype. So originally, Mirage was set to be released on the 12th of October. However, Ubisoft recently announced that the game has already gone gold, which basically means that it's out of development and ready for release. As a result, the release date is now set for October 5th. This jump in schedule has allowed all of the early playtests to be brought forward, and ultimately why you're watching this video earlier than anticipated. With that being said, let's take a look at what Mirage actually looks like. So the story has been marketed as one of the most important parts of Mirage. Ubisoft is using this title to take a step back from the open world RPG style that we've become accustomed to over the past couple of years, going back to linear narrative style that made Assassin's Creed popular in the first place. And from what we've seen, the story looks pretty good. Apparently it's going to take around 20 to 24 hours for the average player to complete, and you can bump this up to about 30 hours for completionists. I think the length is a lot more than people were expecting. I'm sure it's not the 90+ hour campaign that we received in Valhalla, but it's more like the titles like Syndicate, which took less than 20 hours to complete. And as long as all the story missions are high quality and meaningful, we could be in for a real treat here. Aside from the story, we've been able to see a lot more what the core gameplay is actually going to look like, and there are definitely some pros and cons here, starting with the parkour. So parkour is definitely looking a lot more fluid than what we've seen over the past few years. There are a few returning animations as well as some new ones, like the pole vault, which just look better than the parkour in Valhalla and Odyssey. The parkour is practical too, and players were able to get from A to B very easily. Another interesting thing that we picked up was how quick Basim is. Basim is a lot weaker than the other assassins in terms of strength, but he more than makes up for this in speed and agility. It's good to see his physical weakness and lack of ability to take damage being balanced with quick movement and agility. However, with all that being said, the new parkour system hasn't exactly blown anyone's mind. Sure, it looks and plays well, but it doesn't feel massively different from other games. And we've also heard some playtesters say that Unity's parkour was better than Mirage's. This is a massive shame because Mirage's parkour system was based on Unity's, so to hear that it's not as good is pretty disappointing, to say the least. Another thing that really every playtester mentioned was that Mirage still feels a lot like Valhalla. And this does make sense because Mirage was intended to be a DLC for Valhalla, so it was built with Valhalla as a base. Taking that into account, all the menus, pop-ups, user interfaces, and even bigger things like scouting out locations with your eagle all feel very similar to Valhalla. Now, this wouldn't be a massive deal except for one reason. All Ubisoft has gone on about is how every new game they release has all new mechanics, which gets players hyped for the next game. But in reality, literally none of these mechanics are new. Take Mirage's all-new pickpocketing minigame, which is supposed to make pickpocketing more fun and add a bit of risk to reward dilemma in the game. But in reality, it's just Valhalla's combat timing mechanic in different makeup. Another thing is that I, and the community at large, have had a lot of complaints with Valhalla. Bigger parts of the games like grinding for upgrades, the terrible animations, and even awful dialogue really took away from the overall enjoyment factor. So the fact that Mirage is built from this base doesn't exactly bode too well. Although it's not all bad. For the most part, combat was really good in Valhalla, and Mirage is definitely taking combat to that next level, blending the fluidness of Valhalla's combat with the core mechanics of older games. Combat really feels smooth and fluid, and there are a bunch of different light and heavy attacks that you can use together for a nice blend of speed and power. There are also a few secret combos and takedowns that you can throw into the mix for added diversity. And as I said a couple minutes ago, Basim is a lot weaker than recent assassins like Evior. which changes up the combat dynamics quite a lot. Your attacks aren't just going to knock down enemies, and when you start a combo, a lot of your attacks are going to get blocked pretty easily. And from the playtests, we've seen that all this makes parrying the most effective strategy in the game so far. If you parry a strike with perfect timing, you'll be able to pull off an instant kill, which is so much more effective than trying to take on enemies in one-for-one combat. So overall, combat is looking and feeling great, but we've got to remember that combat isn't Basim's best attribute, so this mechanic shouldn't feel like the standout part of the game. So we also got to see the new wanted system in some of the playtests. This system has 3 main levels from 1 to 3. You start off with a neutral wanted level, but as you get up to various shenanigans, your level will go up. Actions like getting caught pickpocketing or killing a guard are all going to increase your wanted level. At level 1, guards will be on the lookout for you. Then at level 2, you're going to have to deal with archers who will actively hunt you down. But level 3 is definitely the scariest, as a mercenary will be sent out to kill you. And this guy is no joke. He deals loads of damage, can block and evade attacks easily, and can even heal himself. To get rid of your wanted level, you either need to take out the mercenary or do the generic Assassin's Creed method of removing posters. All in all, I must say I was pretty impressed with how this system looks, and there's a new jeopardy to stealing and killing, and it makes the game feel just that much more realistic. Now, Ubisoft has made it clear that they are trying to put stealth back into the forefront with Mirage. This is exactly why Basim has been made weaker and your enemies have been made stronger, as it's going to force players to think twice about going in guns blazing. And the playtester footage showed that the stealth system has been worked on heavily for Mirage. The detective system, for instance, has been completely reworked to make it a little bit more balanced than recent titles. But what's even more interesting is how much more of a role the environment has on your stealth gameplay. With Mirage, it's all about timing your moves so that you can move through the crowd walking down the street, using that perfectly placed bench for cover, and finding other ways to use the environment to your advantage. This is awesome to see, because it makes the map feel so much more immersive and alive, and you really gotta think before you make a move. We also got to see how important tools are. So in the past few games, tools have been available, but literally no one used them because there was no point. You could just go in with weapons and complete every mission in the same way. But with Mirage, tools are much more important because Basim is just much weaker than other assassins, and we're seeing a lot of the same tools that we know and love return, but there's also a few new ones that look quite awesome if I must say so myself. Returning tools include things like the torch and throwing knives, and from the gameplay footage, throwing knives look just as overpowered as they always have, and you can use them to either take out enemies from a distance or even destroy crates. But what's really special about this new tool system is how there will be more than one use for each tool. So throwing knives won't just be a weapon, they'll also be a distraction device. Other tools can be used to make noise or create smokes too. So we're also going to see bombs make a return either for distraction or for lethal takedowns. What's also interesting is that all these tools will have different upgrades that you can use to lean into a certain playstyle. This again highlights just how important tools are, and you'll find that if you don't use them, then you're just not going to progress through the game. The same can't be said about previous titles though. Something else that a lot of playtesters picked up on is how big the map actually feels in comparison to its actual size. In terms of raw numbers, Mirage is a fraction of the size of Valhalla, but to make up for this, the map has been packed with buildings, interactive environments, and NPCs, so that the whole thing feels a lot bigger than it is. One of the biggest complaints with the open world titles was how empty they felt at times. So this is a great step in the right direction. And finally, we were able to take a look at Mirage's black box missions. Now, a lot of players have been really excited for these missions because they basically allow you to complete a mission in any way you see fit. However, in Mirage, there's just no diversity in how you complete these missions. You'll have to talk to the exact same people in the exact same way, and generally, there's only one way to reach your final opponent. A lot of the tasks, like blowing up destructible walls and eavesdropping, also feel really repetitive. So yeah, it's pretty disappointing, unfortunately. So there you have it, all the information that we were able to find out in the recent playtester footage. Ultimately, there is a lot to be excited about with Mirage, but this footage also shows that there's some massive flaws in the game that can't be overlooked. Of course, we'd like to know, what is your take on the playtester footage? Did it make you more excited or more nervous for the release of Mirage? And of course, if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out our recent breakdown on Mirage's new skill tree.